How are you? Welcome again. Today, we're going to continue talking about American foods, and we're going to deal with, if we can, the clam. And why would I call that an American food? It was commonly eaten in China up to 4,000 years ago. But in the Pacific Northwest, in my country, we've found big piles of clam shells that go back even farther. The Northwest Indian lives on clams long before the white man appeared. And of course, when the white man did appear in 1620 in New England, the Indians gave him clams and corn, and that's what kept him alive. So clams are terribly American in terms of our diet, and terribly American in terms of our affection. Most people really love clams. If you don't like clams, dear heart, turn off the television now and go make yourself a frozen TV tray, right? Otherwise, stick with me because we're going to eat very, very well today. The clam itself is terribly exciting, and the Americans were using clam shells for wampum. The quahog clam had a nice polish in it. It still does. And they were using them for wampum with the Indians, you know, for bartering. It was used as money, so it goes way back. Now, the types that I want to show you, first of all, my favorite one comes from the Pacific Northwest, and this is a butter clam. These are rather hard to find now, but because we've eaten them all. But when I was a child, oh, they were easy to find. Instead, in most areas on the West Coast, we're now growing a clam that is called a Japanese or a Manila clam. That is to say, the seed came in from the Orient, and they thrive on the West Coast beaches. They're beautiful. I flew in all of these clams from the West Coast today. I'm not being nasty about the East Coast clams. They're wonderful. But I just happen to be a West Coast clam man. And Saul, at the Pure Food Fish Market in the Seattle Public Market, shipped all of these to me. They all came in, and we're very happy to see them. So thanks, Saul. You're a good man. Now, the other clam that I doubt that any of you have seen, unless you live in the West Coast, is a clam called a razor. So called because the shell is just razor sharp. Isn't that an interesting shape? And you can cut yourself severely. My mother and I used to go clamming when I was a little kid, and I always came home with cuts on my fingers from the razor clam. I'll show you how to clean those in a minute. And now the biggie. Are you ready? This is the largest clam in America, and it is indigenous only to the West Coast, particularly the Pacific Northwest. Ouch. Oh, good heavens. 3 clams weigh a ton, you see. This is called a gooey duck. You can see the length of my hand. I'm 6'4". You guess how long this is. That's got to be an 8-inch neck on it. This is the largest clam, and you see he cannot close his shell up, nor can he withdraw his neck. The only bivalve that I know of that cannot pull in his neck. He's just too gigantic. Normally what you do with this clam, well, I'll show you later on, but you cut the neck off, and that is ground up for chowder. You skin it first, and the inside, you remove the stomach, and you can make a wonderful chowder with this gigantic clam. In the old days, I'm 48, don't ask. In the old days, when I was a kid, these were never sold in the markets. They were cheap, and you'd go down to the beach and just help yourself. Now, of course, they're peddled for a small fortune. When you cut the neck off and clean it, you wind up with something like this. You see, once the neck is cleaned, you just blanch it, throw it in boiling water, and then pull off the skin. And let me show you what is done with this. You can grind them up for chowder, or this is what they do in Japan. These are very popular in Japan. You send them to Japan, and they slice them up for sushi and sashimi. And you eat the neck raw. Now, if you're into that sort of thing, there, I think that's enough. I want to put these on a plate for you here. So our first dish is a raw, gooey duck neck. You sit down in your chair. Stop yelling for the neighbors. They can see this later. It's all right. They're delicious. And this would be served on a bit of rice, perhaps, in China or in Japan. In the Northwest, what we generally do is to cut the neck open and pound it as a steak. And it works beautifully for a very tender, lovely piece of meat. I'll show you that one later on if we have time, but they're very good. Now, the last one, excuse me, the last one is for my wife. My wife, Patty, was born in Brooklyn. Now, I would not do this, but so those of you in the West or the East Coast know that I really do love you. I have a whole plate of cherry stone clams. Now, these cherry stones are from the Pacific, from the northeastern portion of the country, New England and all, and they are very, very tender, and you can eat them raw. Now, we would never do such a thing in the Pacific Northwest. I swear that no one eats raw clams. We do eat, these are very beautiful ones too, we do eat oysters raw. That's not unusual, but never a clam raw. I'm sorry, I just don't see anybody do that in the Northwest. It isn't because our clams are too tough, though most of them are. It's because we're just not used to that sort of thing. So, we have raw gooey duck. We'll also cook the duck in chowder. And we have some cherry stone clams from the East. And now let's get started with my method of eating clams, which is the butter clam. And I want to put him in a pot and simply steam him with some garlic and olive oil. So we'll get the burner going here. There he is. And I want to put some olive oil in the pot, not an awful lot, and a few cloves of garlic. I'm putting in, what am I putting in? All right, 4½ tablespoons. I'm teasing you. Put in enough to make the clams happy. After all, if you're going to cook clams, you should treat them well. I happen to know that the King of the Universe is very pleased with clams, or he wouldn't have made so many. There, a little garlic and olive oil. My brother Greg does this with simply wine and parsley. He's a purist, and he'll frown at me when he sees this concoction, but I like garlic in mine, quite a bit of garlic. And then we'll throw in the clams. I'm using my butter clams, you see. And you can tell a butter clam because of the design on the shell. It's spherical. See it? It's spherical and very beautiful. All right, in they go. No water. Isn't that a wonderful sound? And we'll add to that. There we go. There. That's about 1.5 quarts, maybe 2 quarts of clams. I think the number of clams that you eat simply depends on how many clams you can get your hands on. That's our rule. And there'll be a big fight in the house. Jason won't eat clams for this way, but Channing and I love them. Of course, Patty enjoys them too. I need some chopped parsley. Just throw in a handful of chopped parsley. And then we'll put a slosh of wine over that. And of course, a good white will do best. Good white, cheap white. Don't use good wine. Use wine that is there. I want to stir that once, and just give it a quick shake here, so that there we are. Would you like some pepper? All right. I agree. A little pepper would be just great. So we'll put in just a smidgen here, and then put the lid on this rascal. And oh, isn't that great? Nice going, Smith. Your pepper mill's empty. Let's try another one. I showed you my old Greek or Turkish coffee grinder, which I bought in Greece, and this really puts in the pepper. That's plenty. You don't want to overpower this. Clams have a very delicate flavor, and they don't want to be. You don't want to spice them up too much. Okay, on with that one. We'll let that cook until they come to a simmer, and then give them about 5 or 10 minutes, and the shells will open right away, and you'll be ready to go. Did you get that? Wine, garlic, olive oil, a little bit of parsley, maybe a shot of pepper. Very light. I've not put any herbs in these. The French would put some thyme in them. The Italians would put some oregano. In the Northwest, we eat them this way.